My name is Pooja Rambam, and in celebration of International Women's Day, I'll be talking about Chatnabi and progression of women in society. I thank Girl Up Konjel for giving me this opportunity. So this is a series of observations aina sum akoi Manipuri society gi urakpada aduga lerappada thengnaba haitare ko, and I don't claim to know everything. I don't have my aina haibase final word ni haibanati aduga edum lalaga su mayam na ngapiu. Aina khanjabda we can examine women's status and progress in society in three ways. So simplified manner da ko. One is social, one is economic, and one is political. The three dimensions haitare ko khwaidagi simplistic way de yengakpada. So economically nupi se women have played a very important part in Manipur. For example, Ima market khwaidagi lairabada mayamna loi khangbirabada ko. Ima market adudagi not just Ima market but akoigi laikai khudingi akoigi pokham phambi myam se nupi na yamba oyeba. Adugi women have always played a very important part economically. Akoigi yumgi hotnabada adagi yumgi livelihood tanbada nupinsu yamna adum hanadagi thainadagi adum chatnabida akoigi adum leraba potneba anoba pot natte. But the thing is, how much have we progressed from this small scale kind of business haitare ko? Have this small scale yamna profit making like tabida sum hingnana ba adudagi beyond chatpada layer aba adugi so examine to bayai. One of the few things I sum notice to bada we have a lot of upcoming women entrepreneurs haitare ko. And we see people like Elizabeth of Dweller, we see Soshagi Kitchen, Shosha Kitchen, and there are so many others actually. So we see like this ray of hope, in society where women, especially very well educated young women are coming up, and they are excited to explore the opportunities. And very interestingly, they're using like say for Sosha, they're using Tangkhul food, have the akwai indigenous oiba, akwai mapani pot nataba. And even for Ellie, like she's using Manipuri local products, indigenous products, infused taroga semati haitare ko. So that is really interesting. Even Hillwile, I think they're using a lot of local ingredients to make chocolates. So these are all initiatives by women. But at the same time, say these are very few people who are doing it. How many more women will be doing it? That's the question. How many women will come up and feel empowered? And I think it really depends on how supportive their families are. Okay? Because Nupi, if you're a young, you don't have a lot of capital on you. So how many people will be willing to invest? That is a very big question. So usually family the support the biragadi lairakani, and then once you've reached a certain stage, then you can get investors from outside and you can get big investors on your business. So economically we have to see that way, but I think there's always a ray of hope. But how far will this economic progress will it translate in social sphere? Have the nupina pesata alagasu, how much is that money retains with her? Natraga mana magi mama pan lobibra, magi lupana lobibra. So that we have to think. I think one thing which we have seen to some extent is that nupina pesata alagasu magi mapuroiba or magi mama pana lausan biraga. We have heard stories about nupana youth pada lusangiva magi hard earned money do. So adu tadaba pochu nateva. And this still happens. We see crime against women socially, nupi the rape cases, sexual assault. Sina kwaidagi kitan harsh crime haitare, but even in a very normal way, catcalling, nupi the laknaba, nupi the tanaba, these are normalized. I mean, I want the zoo with Pawa, I'm a tom, the topakanda, walking chatpakanda, adum nupam, bike the thoraga or car the thoraga laurama, columba, dum to, and I think it's not just me. I've been nupi me on the money, and to some extent it's normalized. I be oh nupanina, to just nupa these I to bane, and dum kandop the boys will be boys kind of attitude, which is called dum lairiba, and our society condones it. So that is a very sad aspect. I think we need to educate our boys more than our girls that how to make it acceptable behavior. Habidi tinaba nupiga tinaba should be normalized. You should be friends with them, but you shouldn't harass them, you shouldn't catcall them, you shouldn't make them uncomfortable. So akoigi family da bringing da akoigi schools da so nupi nupaga tina handaba adudagi they always yamna hekta scandalize on uhanbado adu udabida yamna normalize oina friendly oina adu to understand each other adudagi to respect each other adumbado akoi society da khara wat lena khalik adugi in some ways akoi gi chatnabi chatnabi as in nupi is a completely different species, nupa is a completely different species. Haibagi tinaroidabani adudagi only you have to only see them romantically. Haibagi aspects kitang nuaite. I think we see it reflected in a lot of our movies as well. So nupi na nupa se nupa na nupi se hekta tanaraga even when she does not agree stop toraga khotlaga yanaba purakpase it's projected as romantic, and that is very problematic. So we need to see all these aspects, and in some ways Manipur is very contradictory because we have women like Maira Paibis, Nisha Bandi Saina, Nupi Myamna Tholaga. They play a very important part in our protest movement, any kind of movement. The Nupi di thol eba. But at the same time, how conscious are they of their own the Nupigi, Nupigi, how conscious are they of being women, and how much conscious are they of struggle as a woman, not just for society but struggle for women. Adugi we see the same people who come out for protest movement, they also indulge in moral policing ko habdi nupi nupa koina bagi kaina katpa kaina ga tauba adudagi nupi na short skirts or dress hele adudagi setpagi moida thini yengthabiba. So that still happens. So we have to see it's very contradictory. It's like we take 2 steps forward but 1 step backwards. So these are some of the observations I see. But one of the very is aspect is so many young girls are speaking out about akoigi chatnabi akoigi luhongbadaga I think the wedding numitki nupi thila kanda nupi na nupagi lukhak chabagi khotpagi. So people are speaking up about it, and people are discussing that akoi chatnabi hai say it's culture, and culture is made by humans. It's not something static. Chatnabi 200-300 years ki mamang the chatna me hai bado we can change it, and we can change it if it's wrong. We can change it if it's not beneficial for our society. We can change it if it's not inclusive. So and not just in terms of women, but also we have to see how our acceptance of different genders, trans women, trans men. I think Manipur has always had very prominent different genders ki hanadagi sulaira, but we've always treated them as slightly apart from society aduga kitan inclusive oidabado. So how do we make it more inclusive society? So we don't only think in terms of like how women are treated, but how these different genders are treated in our society. So this is one aspect akoi naina bayari na khaleko, and I always feel that ai nangangi se I'm not always right, and I'm always open to constructive criticism aduga laga so dum haibiro na khale. And the third aspect is the political aspect, and we all know that akoigi nupi Manipur gi nupi gi thauna se yamna laiye nabadi haire ko akoigi nupi landagi adagi Maira Paibi, Nisha Bandi adagi protest against AFSPA. We have seen so many women take part in all these political movements. But how much capital women actually have? Do they have like political power? Do they vote in terms of women ki issues ki manungda vote over yaubra that we need to improve women's position, and in what ways? Adugi do we have all these political issues the main election matamda sigi matangda mayam khanbibra? Do they think about it? And I feel to some extent it's not there. Nupigi thawaina crime against women or nupigi economic and social aspect improve tawnaba vote tawba di kitang wat pamale. And how many women do we see in politics? That also is there. I think right now Manipur has only 2 women elected officials, elected members in our assembly. And I think it's not enough for a state where we are so proud of our women. We are so proud of, women making marks in sports, in administration, in art and culture, the aspect, the political aspect, the what and it's really sad because unless women are in positions of power, they will not be able to challenge things. Have the gender budget kind of a high level say how much, unless women are actually there to say that this is what we, this is our problem, this is our issues, and this needs to be brought in the agenda of the government. High jagadi but since they don't experience, they don't know the experience of being a woman, they don't understand the struggles, the discrimination, the oppression, the glass ceiling we face in every aspect, whether in career, whether in schooling, whether in our own families. See kangang da banina law making, policy making, the so kitang walakani ba. So, we need women leaders. We need women leaders of not just in politics, but in every sphere, whether it's business or whether it's administration, whether it's in social work, whether it's in music. But very important is political, and we need more women. I hope younger women come out and work for politics and work for women issues and work for gender issues. So these are some of the Manipur ki society ki chatnabi and progression ki batang the khanzabani, and I'm sure that I've left out many more aspects of it. But this is what I have so far, and thank you so much. I hope that we celebrate Women's Day every day and not just on this day, but it's a good day to remind ourselves how far we have come. We need to celebrate for the achievements also, but we also need to realize that awat pasingsu lady and the struggle continues, and our generation, the next generation, needs to take this torch forward. Thank you.